So the agenda of the session is pretty interesting, and I think I was getting nervous about the agenda of the meeting because complete roadmap to product sense and strategy is actually a pretty hard topic. The reason is because product sense and strategy, like as you hear, like multiple people telling you that this is all about intuition. We beat that notion. I think I launched the product sense course in sort of April this year. And then Shreyas has also launched a product sense course. So nowadays, like I can tell people that, okay, it's not just me who is slightly delusional about sort of teaching product sense. I have a person sitting in Valley who is very admired by a lot of product folks also doing the same, right? So nonetheless, like if you talk to like most of the people around, what you'll realize is product sense is still considered something of an art. Just mute Bandri. So product sense is still considered something like an art. It's still considered mystic, intuition. And another part of the reason, if you ask me, right, if I'm looking at the reasons on why that is so, one is because it's very hard to articulate on what product sense means. It's even harder to articulate how do you learn that. Like you will meet people who are good with product sense. It can be quantified because they usually discuss very good, like very sort of strong decisions. They have very strong arguments, counter arguments. But it becomes very hard to articulate, like how did they reach to that argument or counter argument, right? It's sort of like large language models because like the black box is sitting there and you don't know how the output emerges out of that black box. So that's the first reason. But the second reason, which I believe is a slightly difficult one to think of, is like people who have gotten this good product sense through intuition or through hard work. They could never understand how they came to actually get it. And because they can't make sense of it, they would find it hard to even make a point that, no, this is something that is teachable and all that, right? So there goes like the first thing about product sense, which is like, it is difficult to describe, but it is even difficult to teach. And hence, when I said I'm going to talk about complete roadmap to product sense and strategy, somewhere in my mind, there was a little bit of skepticism, right? Because of these reasons. But fortunately, I've taught a cohort of 70 people, 70 PMs who are experienced. And that gives me some confidence that in the next 2 hours, and possibly like we'll take 15, 20 minutes more for Q&A, I would be able to share whatever I've gained through last 1.5 years of research, right? I've done a lot of research around this topic, and I'm going to deconstruct product sense and strategy for you, right? So stay with me and feel free to ask any questions you have in the chat. You can also use the Q&A option that is available in Zoom, but feel free to ask anything in chat. We monitor chat. What we'll do is we'll have 2 Q&A sessions. Like after the first 3 topics, we'll have a short Q&A. We'll take a break for 5 minutes. And then we'll have a final Q&A where we'll take the rest of the questions. The agenda of the meeting is as follows. Like first, we talk about what is product sense, product strategy, and the connection between them. The second, we go after like, why is it difficult to learn product sense and strategy, right? How is it different than learning maths or computer science or anything else, right? And what makes it so difficult that people call it an art or something which is like intuition. The third is like we start with complete roadmap for PSS, right? But because that is the major segment, we can't cover the whole thing. So we'll take a break, we'll take some Q&As, and then we will continue with complete roadmap for PSS. PSS is short for product sense and strategy, in case like you didn't catch it for the first time. The last segment, which is a smaller one, is how do you measure whether like your product sense is good and whether you are improving it over time, right? And then we open for final Q&A. So that's the agenda of the meeting, more or less. I will see if there are any questions.
Hi, sir.
Okay, there is one question around, will you share the recording? We are definitely recording it. We'll share segments of it, but we won't share the whole recording. So let's start with first things first, right? First things first is I advise most of the PMs I meet to actually manage their information diet very, very well, right? What I mean by that is if you get garbage in, you'll get garbage out, right? If you don't monitor the kind of case studies, the kind of concepts, the kind of frameworks, the kind of books you're reading, you would end up having a pretty bad product sense, pretty bad product strategy, pretty bad almost everything in your professional lives. But that also raises a question, which is like, who am I to talk about product sense? And I believe like you should not move forward without answering that, right? Because it actually ties into something that I advise all the PMs. So my journey with product like starts with Housing.com. It was poster child of Indian startups. It raised like $100 million in 2014-15. I joined it very early, worked on a lot of 0 to 1 data products. I also built the product analytics team in India. It was possibly the first product analytics team in India because after that, I heard Flipkart built it and all that. But before that, Meta had built product analytics team in Silicon Valley. And that was the inspiration to build something like that in India to help PMs make data-driven decisions. So that is Housing.com. I was then director of product at Upgrad, where I looked across a variety of products like growth. I was head of growth. Then I was also leading data science for a while. I built community product. I built learner experience products and all that. Right. So Upgrad was a lot of 0 to 1, 1 to 10, or 1 to N sort of products for me. And then I moved to MX Player, where I was leading the product growth, where I looked after growing the daily active users and monthly active users. And I also looked after the content recommendation engine and everything because it affected growth heavily, right? So that was MX Player. MX Player helped me sort of see the scale, which is like tens of millions of daily active users, and sort of how do you grow that? Like that was the journey for MX Player. Flipkart happened next, and Flipkart was an interesting bit because in Flipkart, I managed the AI products, which was basically the shopping assistant, voice search. And I also built the games platform. So the platform products, the AI products and the 0 to 1 products, like something like building games 0 to 1 and all, was my Flipkart journey. And it was very interesting because these were like very unique products that Flipkart was trying to build. Voice search is like something that we got a lot of success with. Assistant is something that we got a lot of heartache with and all that. But Flipkart was very interesting that way because it was before AI was very cool, right? I was heading the AI, conversational AI products for Flipkart. And then I think before PM Curve, which is my current stint, like I was senior director of product at Unacademy. So where I was looking at end-to-end learner experience and also growing the users coming to the platform, activating them, and then finally like looking at the conversions, right? So growth. So if you see like growth has been a consistent theme, 0 to 1, 1 to N like has been a consistent theme. Data products I've built growth products, platform products, AI products. So it's all over the place. And part of the reason is because I have consciously sort of kept it all over the place. My belief is like more exposure usually makes you a better PM in like product management. We are yet to see that thesis pan out, but here I am, and add like 400 plus books over business, product, growth, and leadership over the last decade. And that is who I am, right? Like that is who I am talking about, like product sense and strategy now with you, right? And I would say like both have done equal contribution in my growth, my understanding of product domain, and books more so over because like books are wisdom that people collected, and somewhere like we've forgotten a lot of books. But if you go and read them, they will actually help you a lot in terms of like thinking originally or even reliving some of the ideas that are out of fashion now. So books are that. Final, like last but not the least, in the last 30 seconds, I would talk about the Growth Catalyst newsletter that I started my educating PM's journey with. It has now like 12,000 subscribers. I wrote the book Tech Simplified, launched it a couple of years back. It has now sold 10,000 copies. And then PM Curve is my current, I'm founder of PM Curve for the last 1.5 years. And you can go to PM Curve and check whatever I have done, right? It's all there. So I'm not going to speak a lot about that. Let's start with a very fundamental thing that I do for all my sessions, which is I want to understand the audience we have today so that I can skip few slides and I can actually focus on slides that matters more for the majority of the audience, right? So you should be able to see this Zoom poll on your screen. I will take 30 seconds. And I would just do enough sampling to know that, okay, this is the audience composition we have today. Wow. This is pretty interesting. I'll close this now. Okay, I think we have like, it's very similar to what I get in my cohorts also, like 0 to 1 years of experience, 7%. You can see it, right? 30% 2 to 5, 30% 6 to 9, and 30% like 10 plus years of experience. So yeah, I think the slides are actually meant for the whole audience. Okay, let's start with product sense, right? And product sense definition, if you have been looking at my LinkedIn post, I've written about this a lot, which actually ties to the product sense, ties to one of the fundamental leadership principles of Amazon. which is also one of my favorite, along with like customer obsession, which is leaders are right a lot. So while bias for action is something which got very, very popular in Indian startup ecosystem and also in US, I believe, because Amazon actually has a very high bias for action. You'd be surprised to know that the bias for action also has a counter metric in Amazon's leadership principles, and that is leaders are right a lot. Because the problem is, if you have bias for action, if you're executing a lot, your chances of getting wrong also increases. So Amazon, I believe, has consciously put this principle to counteract that people are not just shipping products, people are not just executing it. People are also thinking and making the right decisions. And they also track like which of the leaders are more right than wrong. And I believe the leadership promotions also happen through that, right? And the same happens with your product roles that you get. At most, like if you're lucky, if you're working in a startup, you get to launch like 6 to 7 medium products and 1 or 2 major launches. If you're working in larger company, possibly 1 major launch a year and 2 to 3 like minor products, right? That's the pace at which you operate. And because you're taking 6 to 7 good decisions in a year, it's very important that they're right. Because the output of the business team depends on it, the output of the engineering team depends on it, the output of design teams depend on it. You as PMs have the highest leverage in the organization, and which is why like you have to be right a lot. And product sense is all about like your ability to make the right decisions most of the times. So if somebody next time, like when somebody asks you, do you have a good product sense, which is a question I got, by the way, in my interview at Unacademy also. It's a pretty common question. I think rather than trying to say yes or no, try to substantiate it by saying that I think in the last 5 major launches I had, I have been successful in hitting the metric in 3 of those. One has been decent, one has been an absolute failure. And usually like anything which is above 50-60% hit rate, success rate in launches is actually good product sense, right? So that's your benchmark there, right? If you meet the median, which is like 50-60% success rate, you are in good company, right? Now, another misconception. So that's the definition of it. The problem is product sense is further has gotten like problematic because we have product sense interviews and then there is product sense as job. In fact, think of it like this. So for example, Flipkart, where I work, like hires only candidates who do very well in like product sense and problem solving. But when they go to Flipkart, when they are operating in their jobs, it's not that everybody is getting exceeds expectation or meets expectation or outstanding performance, right? Only let's say 10-20% people are getting exceeds expectation, another 30-40-50% will be getting meets expectation, and then people will be getting like you need to improve yourself. So which means that the job performance is very different than interview performance when it comes to product sense questions. And why is that different? If we have to deconstruct that, the reasons are as follows. The first reason is interviews, you don't do data-driven decision making in interviews. And when I say data, I don't mean just numbers. I also mean qualitative data, which is user interviews, anecdotes, reviews, and all that, right? So you don't do any data-driven decision making in interviews, but in real job, you have to look at data and make the decisions. You have to talk to users and make the decisions. The second difference is you can make intelligent assumptions in interviews and justify them why they are good assumptions. And in interviews, if you make good assumptions, people will value you highly because that's a sign of intelligence. That's a sign that you understand how to build products. Because that's the first step of building good products, which is making intelligent assumptions based on the information you have. But in real job, you don't just have to make intelligent assumptions. You have to vet the assumptions, and you also have to vet soon. You don't have like a lot of time to vet those assumptions. You are limited by constraints in a particular job, right? And the last one is you can surface high quality user problems or problems in interviews and do well. But in job, you don't just have to surface high quality problems, you have to vet them. So you need to know how to vet high quality problems, how to prioritize good problems, and then finally how to come up with high quality solutions, which is the hardest part, right? You can know like this is a problem, but the way this got solved by company A versus company B determines whether it will get the adoption, whether it will get the retention, whether it will get the monetization that you need, right? So these are like, so interviews, if you ask me product sense in interviews, it's just like scratching the surface. On real job is when the real test lies, where you are actually making the decisions and you have to show that you're making right decisions consistently, right? So that's product sense for you in interviews. Now let's come to product strategy. I know you have read some blogs around product strategy, most of which are talking about this. Product strategy is the connective tissue between company strategy and product roadmap. Say yes if this is what you have read. Yeah. Okay, great. So Amazon strategy is company strategy. Books is a business unit. So book strategy is BU strategy. Product strategy, I don't know what that is, by the way. Product roadmap is list of initiatives for books. For example, Kindle's, what are we going to build in Kindle? What features are we going to build for discovery of books, better discovery of books, better discovery of ratings and reviews of books and all that, right? So we understand the company strategy. We understand the BU strategy. We understand the roadmap. I find it very, very hard to understand product strategy, right? And which is why, like, I question, like anything I don't understand, by the way, like, I don't believe I'm a very intelligent person, but I have a lot of grit. I ask a lot of good questions, right? And when I ask this question to myself, which is, what is product strategy? And I don't get an answer. I usually have to go and read and figure out like what exactly is product strategy. And here is my answer to you that I have come up with. So if you want to be good at product strategy, you need to be good at two things. One is business strategy, second is product sense. Okay. Now, business strategy, when you say, people understand. There is a lot of literature around it. There is a lot of, there are a lot of books written around. We have like at least 50 to 60 years of research on business strategy. We have another 300, 400, 500 years of war literature from where like business strategy fundamentally derived itself, right? Guerrilla marketing and all, right? All of that is derived from war literature. So business strategy, we have a lot of literature on, and we can actually understand and be good at. I am suggesting be good at business strategy and be good at product sense, and you'll be good at product strategy, right? Now, it will all tie together, by the way, like once you have understand what is business strategy, because even there is a lot of misconception. Usually when we talk about business strategy, the diagram that comes to our mind is vision, mission, which is something on the right-hand side. Vision, mission, and then this particular theme, these are the 5 initiatives. These are the 5. This is how annual planning happens, right? Like you look at vision of the company, mission of the company, and then you say in books, we are going to take 5 initiatives. And we have used RISE to prioritize these 5 initiatives, and this is our roadmap and all that. That is the wrong definition of strategy, right? And when I say strategy, I usually mean business strategy, product strategy, everything. That is a wrong definition of any strategy. And like this is something which is borrowed from Roger Martin, who wrote this book called Playing to Win, right? He has a beautiful video on YouTube, which is like 5 minutes long. Just go and see, like, a strategy isn't a plan, right? It's a pretty good video. But what he talks about is strategy is all about choosing where to play and how to win, and then figuring details about it, right? So where to play will derive from what is your winning aspiration. Do you want to be the company which generates highest amount of profits, highest amount of market share, highest amount of revenue, or what? What do you want to become? Do you want to build the most defensible business? What is your winning aspiration, right? And from winning aspiration comes, where do you play? Which segment do you go to? Which users do you go to? Which partnerships do you go to? And then finally, you say how to win. Like, how do we win those segments? How do you get those partnerships? Because to do that, you need to build some capabilities and some systems, which is culture, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Because if you do first 4 and still don't build the right systems, you'll still fail. So strategy is understanding, like, what is that unique set of choices you are making, which will help you win, right? That is strategy. If you're a cricket fan, like, you would see, like, the strategy is all about, like, where do you put spinners? Where do you put pacers? Who goes to bat on number 3? Who goes to bat on number 7 and all that? All of that is strategy. What are the choices you are making, which will create a winning combination for your team, right? So that is strategy, right? And there's a lot of literature around it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Just go and watch this video, Strategy Isn't a Plan. If you want to follow up, go and read his book, Playing to Win. It's a fabulous book. It's one of the most beautiful books written on strategy because of its simplicity. Because most books make strategy a very burdensome term. This book actually sort of simplifies it. So go and read Playing to Win by Roger Martin, and you should be good with business strategy. Now my question is, we have talked about product sense. What is product sense? Being right about decisions, product decisions most of the time. We have talked about business strategy, where we are saying that we have to decide what choices are we taking and how will it help us win. So then what's the connection between product sense and strategy, or product sense and product strategy? That becomes a question, because this was a fundamental dilemma in my head when I was trying to design the course around product sense. Should I call it product sense or product sense and strategy? In my head, product sense and strategy are not separate. And this is why. if you look at the decisions and their time frame, scope, and impact of those decisions, give it a smaller time frame, and everything falls into product sense. Extend the time frame. Think about 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, your long-term goals, and it suddenly falls into product strategy. Every decision you take, every choice you take, falls into product strategy, right? And which is why I'm saying product sense is the prereq to product strategy. If you add product sense and business strategy, which is longest term, you actually get product strategy, which is what are the choices you are making in your product, what are the right choices you are making in your product, which will help you win. That's what product strategy is, right? And mind the word choices. Even if a company, like I have met like founders who said that product strategy is all fluff, we don't believe in strategy and all. And I'm like, whether you believe it or not, strategy is happening. You can't avoid strategy. You are anyway making decisions on a day-to-day basis. You are anyway choosing your company to be something. So you are taking choices at every point of time. Strategy will just make those choices consistent so that you have a chance of winning in the long run, right? So you can't avoid strategy. It's not fluff. It's actually a very, very real thing, which has sort of created some of the most defensible businesses across the world. Think Apple, think Meta, think Google. Everybody's following a strategy. Think OpenAI. Go and listen to some of the Sam Altman's sort of podcast, or listen to like some of Arvind's Perplexity CEO podcast. And you see like they actually are very clear about the choices they are making. One is chasing foundational models, one is chasing like user experience and all that, right? So they have a strategy, right? Now, just to make it more, just to make it stick for you in your head, let's do this exercise for a little bit. Let's take a few decisions. First decision, if you have to figure out the right design for the login screen, does it fall in product sense 1, just type 1, or product strategy, which is 2? Okay. So 1 is a majority, and that is correct. Right design, your design sense is a part of product sense. You critiquing your particular design on a login screen, which is a very reversible decision, which is a short-term decision and all that, is actually product sense. It ties to product strategy at some level, but yeah, it's far away from your product strategy. And let's ask the second question, which is like, do Bharat users care about price? If you're trying to answer this particular question, is it a part of product sense or strategy? 1 for product sense, 2 for strategy. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. See, therein lies the dilemma, which is why I'm saying like we have to club the terms rather than confusing it. Because do Bharat users care about the price will determine strategy. It's a basically it's a question you have to answer to sort of create your strategy. But to understand this truly, you need to master product sense, because product sense is all about like user psychology, how do they think, their mental models, how do they make decisions and all that. Without having a good product sense, you can craft that strategy. You'll mostly do a survey and you'll fail miserably, because of course, like who tells the truth on a survey? Right. So it's basically like I would put it like 60% in product sense, but it is a precursor to my strategy. So 40% in product strategy. Should we price our product high or low? Is it a product sense question or a product strategy question? 1 or 2? Strategy is 2. So now you folks are getting it. I think at least most of you, right? It's both 1 and 2, but it's leaning more towards 2, because should we price high or low is not just a function of what my user feels. It's also the function of industry. It's also the function of competition. It's the function of market trends and all that. A lot of things which come together when you're thinking of business strategy or strategy in general, right? But you also have to think about user psyche, which is like, if I price my course at 100 rupees, will people still value it? That's a psychological question. That's very hard to answer. Like if you have just read business strategy. And the last one is, let's say, should we be managed marketplace or a platform? Managed marketplace is something like Airbnb. A platform is more like AWS or something, right? So every company which is a managed marketplace can become platform and vice versa. It depends on the take rate. But suppose this is a question, is it 1 or 2? People are leaning towards 2. It's more 2, less 1. But I think you folks now get where I am coming from, right? Which is like product sense and strategy are two sides of the same coin. If you miss product strategy, it will hurt you. If you miss product sense because you have not worked closer to products, design, data, and everything, it will again hurt you, right? And while strategy is something for which you will get like enough recommendations of books, product sense is something which is less understood, and that is where we are going to focus our question. Mind that even to become great at product strategy, you need to be great at product sense. It's basically like it's a necessary condition, right? Now, my question is like, so let's come to the second part of the equation now. Now that you have understood product sense and strategy, let's come to the second part of the question, which is why is it so difficult to teach, especially product sense? Why was there no course around product sense till April this year, when I think PM Curve launched the first product sense course across the globe, right? And I have like talked to a lot of CTOs, CPOs, like these are the people who I admire, by the way, nothing to take from what they have done. And 80% of them were skeptical. Okay, you are going to teach product sense, great. I think it's a bold experiment, but we are not sure that it can be taught, right? So what is it that makes people so uncomfortable when we talk about teaching or learning product sense in an academic way, right? In a structured manner, right? If you don't answer that question, you won't be able to understand what it takes to sort of build a strong product sense. And which is why rather than directly jumping to do this, this, and this, I'm spending some time on helping you understand what is product sense, what is product strategy, why are they difficult to master and all that. Because unless you understand this, you won't be able to do a complete picture, right? And if you don't have a complete picture, you will make the same mistake that people make. You'll master everything in isolation and you'll still fail at product sense, where you need to tie everything together, right? So to answer this question, this is one of the slides which is my favorite, and I have used it a couple of times in the past also. But if you think of it, making decisions in product management is a lot like making decisions in investing. In investing, you have a lot of data, right? In investing, you also have like good knowledge. It's not that like you can talk to users, the company that you're going to invest in, you can talk to their users and all that. But still, like we see very few world-class investors. And the median is usually failing in terms of their investment return. And the same is true about PMing, by the way. In PMing or even writing, which are like more ill-structured domains, people often, the averages often are not making a lot of difference. And the reason is because these are like one very hard to learn, which is what we call ill-structured domain. You can't learn concepts like in computer programming or maths and apply them in product management, right? So in computer programming, you can learn concept, you can just write code, it's like maths. So you learn concept, you apply them, and you have the final result. You can predict it. That is not the case with product management. It's ill-structured, it's subjective. Even design is very subjective, right? It was not before like Snapchat came in that people believed that opening the app in camera is actually a good design choice, right? Nobody believed that. But then Snapchat came and made that happen, right? So it's very ill-structured domain. It's very hard to sort of structure it like mathematics or something. The second is even more difficult, which is it's very wicked domain. What I mean by wicked is basically if something worked yesterday, it is not going to work today. In investing, if a stock is rising, and got, let's say, 100% return in 1 year, think of NVIDIA, investing today on the same stock is not going to promise you the same yield for next year. And we call such domains investing, where like, even if you apply the same formula, it can fail. What was successful a year back can fail today. If you try to build the e-commerce platform like Flipkart today, it will fail in India. You have to take a different approach. Even if you go via the Meesho route, which is just like 10 years old company, you'll still fail, right? So this is wicked domain where like you can't repeat the patterns. And you also don't have formulas, which you can add together and actually make sense. And which is why like making decisions in PM is a lot like making decisions in investing. And which is why to become world-class at it, you have to look at like a lot of things which investors look at and the way investors make decisions. Now, beyond investing, there are other analogies that you can find useful. Judo, for example, is another ill-structured wicked domain. You can't anticipate what your opponent is going to do and all. Fighter pilots is another domain, right? And by the way, like while building, let's say the course that I built, I actually went through and studied like how they train fighter pilots, how to learn judo, how to learn investing and all that. I read a lot about Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger and all that. And all that actually is useful in product sense and strategy, right? So analogies, I think if you're looking at analogies to draw why it's difficult to master, think of investing, fighter pilot or judo. Like there are very few world-class operators there. And same is true about products. In fact, the best people with products and strategy are usually founders. who know about everything, and they can bring everything together to make the right decisions at the highest levels, right? So that is basically how to think about product sense. Now, if you want to, now that I know you're waiting for this, so what do we do, Deepak? Right? That's the question. Now, my advice is very simple. First, work with people who are good at product sense. A lot of product sense cannot be codified. It cannot be put in words, right? And we call that thing tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is like learning a bicycle. You can't write how to ride a bicycle and somebody reads it and start riding bicycle, right? So just like riding bicycle or swimming, you can't write instructions and people will start doing it. You only learn a certain extent by just doing or working with somebody who does it very, very well. You also need to learn product sense from people who are good at that and who are around you, right? And while learning, you have to be wary of the method of learning that you follow, right? So you learn concepts and frameworks first, of course, but then you move to like real case studies, which is like this product did Swiggy built like this, Zomato built like this, Flipkart built like this. And from there, you graduate to either hypothetical case studies. For example, we do capstone projects. You can also look at a certain product, try to analyze it and all that. So hypothetical case studies, or you actually build products and practice via building real life case studies in your career, right? But this is a sequence. This is basically the kind of sequence you have to follow to master product sense. Now, one word of caution here is around the word case study. I feel it's a very abused term, right? Which is why I'm going to clarify that podcasts are not case studies. LinkedIn posts are not case studies. Twitter threads are not case studies. Short YouTube videos around how Blinkit won the quick commerce market are not case studies. A case study usually is when you're talking to the source, which is the PM or founder who have actually worked on the problem, right? You can't listen to Lenny's podcast on a B2B product and feel that you have actually gone through a case study on B2B product building. You have, but if you talk to a PM or a founder who has actually operated in that for 10 years, I think you can actually become very good at understanding that particular case study or that domain. The second is you read to world-class analysts or what domain experts. I'm talking about world-class. And the examples are like Ben Thompson, who writes strategy around big tech, Matthew Ball, who writes around metaverse, OTT, gaming, Paul Graham, who writes around startups. Like these are world-class people. These are the people you should read. And the third is like read the long form pieces. For example, Walk the Chat had this piece around Pinduoduo, which is almost like 5 to 10,000 words long. To write such long form pieces, you need a lot of research. You need to go into a lot of nuance. You can't write such posts because if they're boring, if they don't have enough nuance, people will leave reading it. They're such like long form pieces. So read those to sort of become better at product sense. This is possibly the most important slide so far, right? So remember this for a long, 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 long time. And you'll do good when it comes to product sense and strategy. So we talked about work with people, master concepts like this, understand what is a good versus bad case study, and finally, know what all competencies you need to master product sense. Because there will be a moment like in metrics, like Neo has that moment when he realizes that all of a sudden everything has come together and like he can actually stop bullets. That's the moment you're chasing to master product sense. And you'll have to learn it skill by skill by skill by skill until it all starts coming together and you can start seeing like beautiful discussions happening in groups, right? This is the part which I focus on when I talk about complete roadmap to PSS. We are like, I think we are 45 minutes in. Let me sort of, there are 3, 4 more slides and then we'll take Q&A and 5 minutes break. But let me go through, let's take this question for a while, which is like, let's take 2 minutes to think about what all information is relevant to a product decision. Because so far, like we have now understood that if I can make the right decision in a short frame, I can have actually good product sense. In the long frame, I can be good at both product sense and strategy. So all I have to focus on is now to break down what does it take to make good decisions. So let's take a couple of minutes, think about it, go to ChatGPT Cloud if you want, and try to come up with like 3, 4 key things which are relevant in making product decisions. Meanwhile, I will, and just put it on chat. Meanwhile, I will surf through questions, try to shortlist some questions. Okay, I'm going through like some of the things which people have posted. Behavioral data, for sure. Customer interviews, market data, domain landscape, personas, goes back to behavioral data. Historical data, which is quantitative data. Metrics, which ties to historical data. CEO approval is funny, goes back to Hippo. Market size, need for primary target group, alternatives, internal advantages. Good set of things. User needs, pain points, business, competition, customer, technical feasibility, ROI, PMF. Why are we building it? Who are we building for? Larger business goal, personas. You see, this is the, whatever you have gone through right now in your head, and you see like everybody's head is operating in a different way, is the fundamental reason it's hard to master product sense, because you talk to 5 people, they will tell you 5 different things. And you're now confused who to follow, who not to follow, right? And by the way, all of these are right, because depending on the decision, some of these or all of these will be used, including pricing strategy, which Shruti mentioned, right? Is the problem relevant or big enough? Which Sarika mentioned. Like all of these are the right questions, because decision making is multifaceted. You can't take one facet, which is user, and make a decision. You have to think about whether user is telling the truth or lie. You can't take even the business as a facet and make decisions. That will even lead to a bigger disaster down the line and all that. So how do we think about like how to make the right product decision? That is all the roadmap is all about, right? And you also have to realize that if you're thinking that I'll become good at product sense next 2 years, that is a fallacy. Because product sense, product scope changes with seniority level. So the type of decisions you make also changes with seniority level. So your product sense will also change with seniority level. What's worse is product sense is also domain dependent, which means somebody can have a great product sense in education, but not so good product sense in fintech. Somebody can have great product sense in fintech, but not so good in B2B, right? So what you need to focus on right now, because see, domain, I think we can master. Domain is, if we are good at product business strategy, I think we can master a domain and users. But what about the product scope? That changes with seniority level, right? So with seniority level, if you look at the product scope as an ICPM, you're looking at a feature or area of the product. As a PM manager, which is GPM or a lead PM, when you're managing a team of PMs, you're looking at one or more product lines, full product lines. As you become executive, product executive, which is director, VP, CPO, you are managing the complete product suite. So you have a big block of like, let's say the whole learner experience lies with you. The whole seller experience lies with you. And the product sense that you need to master or strategy that you need to master also has to change with level. You need to know what matters at what level of decisions, right? And these are like broader skills that matter. The domain knowledge, which is design, data, tech, users knowledge, critical problem solving, business, growth, creativity or creative problem solving, prioritization, company strategy, industry, risks, MVP. There is nothing in this list that you don't know. But as Feynman said, like there is a difference between knowing the name of something and knowing something. So we are going to focus on knowing something rather than knowing the name of something, right? Let's take it one by one, right? So let's talk about user knowledge. Now, user knowledge could start from like talking to users for half an hour, like 10 users and saying that I have user knowledge, and could end at I can actually predict what people want. I can actually read their minds. I can actually know what they're not thinking, or what they're going to think, or what they are thinking but not saying. Actually, you can't know what they're not thinking. So the thing is, the user knowledge, if you look at it, both at initial PM level and PM manager level, you need to have very high amount of user knowledge. In fact, that is the advantage you have as like that is the value you bring on the table. But to master your knowledge, you have to understand like user research, user psychology. You have to think about like biases, heuristics, and all those things to compile a good user knowledge. You also have to understand which research methods actually don't work that well, which research method is suitable for a particular situation, right? So usually in the initial level, IC PM or a PM manager level, you need to have a very high level of user knowledge, which means you need to have very high knowledge of research and user psychology. But as you become an executive, you don't need to have that high level of user knowledge. And there are 2 reasons for it. One, you don't have time to actually go through all the customer discussions. And number two, you have enough intuition built in a particular domain that if somebody tells you one, you can add one to it and make two. So you can make sense of things very quickly because you have a lot of historical data stored in your mind, subconsciously or consciously. And you can rely on it to actually ask the right questions. I think it's a very common joke, but it's a very right one for this situation where people say that an APM runs to a director of product saying that our A/B test has seen 50% lift in conversion. And the director of product is like, when did we made it live? And the APM is like yesterday, right? So the director knows that 50% is an anomaly. Maybe our data instrumentation is wrong. Maybe the sample size is wrong. Maybe like our product has stopped working altogether for a particular set of users, right? The director of product knows that. APM does not have that context, has not gone through enough experiments to know what is the right zone for A/B test lift. What is the right time to look at that lift and all that. So that's basically the user knowledge. The second is, let's say, company knowledge, and we'll go for Q&A after this because I know you folks are slightly feeling tired now. Company knowledge is actually, it should increase linearly. So if you are a PM, I know a lot of PMs, I see a lot of PMs getting involved in gossip and talking about like what is happening at top levels and all that. Believe me when I say that, you don't have enough power to make a difference and you don't have enough context to actually interpret whatever you hear. So don't spend a lot of time in this, right? Look at company mission, vision, attend all the sort of podcasts that CEO goes to and all that. Do all that, read all about it. But your context and control is too limited for you to make any sizable difference by spending a lot on company. But as you become a PM manager, you need to understand the company because you're now fighting for resources. You're now fighting for how do you convince leadership of a new product line you want to launch and all that, right? So at PM manager level, you need to have company knowledge. It's like the details of strategy rather than just like the vision or mission, right? What are the strategic pillars this year that company is focusing on? You need to know all of that so that you can align your whole pod around it. And finally, when you become a PM executive, you need to have like the full context of company knowledge. Because without that, you will fail to operate and make some impact. So that's company knowledge for you, right? We have like other skills and like how should you think about it? What do they mean? And why do they make sense when it comes to product sense and strategy? But before that, I'll take some questions. So 5 to 10 minutes for questions and then a 5 minutes break. Let me pick some questions that I found actually very good. 3 books to improve PSS. I have a set of book recommendations at the end. I think you'll be able to see like 8 to 10 books that you should read immediately to be better at product sense. Manas is like for a 0 to 1 product, shouldn't exec also understand users deeply? So Manas, for 0 to 1 products, you don't need to have a product executive leading that because executive means there is a manager of managers sitting. So in a PM team, if the CPO is looking at 0 to 1 product and has hired a lead PM and then there are few APMs, you don't need so many PMs to actually build a 0 to 1 product. So which is why like for 0 to 1 products, when you're building as a founder, you don't need a PM. And even later on, 0 to 1 products usually are led by GPMs or PM managers, right? At best. At executive level, they help you with resourcing, prioritization, sizing, opportunity sizing and all that. But the CPO or a VP of product does not lead 0 to 1 end to end, right? Shashank has this question: how do we associate with good PSS when we are starting out? Good people with good PSS. Any tips on identify real case studies? So real case studies, Shashank, like I mentioned, go to world-class analysts, go and read like things written by actual operators, which is like the founders or something like somebody like Paul Graham who has authority on how to build startups and all that. So go and seek like people who have authority to speak about that thing, right? People who have been operators and built those things. I have written a blog around Growth Catalyst, I think a couple of issues back. Like there was a whole blog around how to find the right case studies. So go and read that whole bit if you are actually finding challenge around it. And feel free to DM questions further, right? To find good people around, like if you want to identify people with good product sense and strategy, just ask around. Like in any organization, people know which of the PMs or which of the lead PMs or which of the director of products have very strong product sense. So you make a list of 3 or 4 people and you get mentorship. In a company setup, I feel like people are very comfortable doing a half an hour mentorship every week or every month. So find somebody, even if you can't directly work with them, find somebody who can mentor you in your company. If you can't find somebody in your company, try to figure out like some other company and see if they're willing to mentor you, right? It's harder that way, like if you try to find somebody from outside, but you still have to try and find your mentors who are good in product sense. And the best way is to ask people around, like ask other PMs who are the people who have strong product sense and triangulate. Like if enough people are saying that this particular person has good product sense, you know they have actually good product sense and strategy. So that's how you identify. Babo has this question: how much does product sense and strategy matter in startups versus large organizations? Right. So Babo, like I said, the scope of the work increases as you move up in larger organizations. So as you move up, if you are not good at product sense and strategy, you'll face a lot of challenge in getting beyond the level. For example, a lot of senior PMs don't become lead PMs because they get the feedback that their product strategy is weak. So they can't be relied on making the right roadmaps or taking the right 0 to 1 initiatives, right? So in large organizations, this starts mattering. Product sense starts mattering on year 1. Product strategy starts mattering after you become SPM and trying for a GPM or a director role. In a small startup, product sense and strategy matters from day 1. I think even an APM should have a strong product sense and strategy mindset, or they should try to build one, because it's not a large team and every decision, every feature that you make has a cost to startup, right? So startups need actually like better PMs because their survival depends on these PMs being best in class. Feel free to ask follow-up questions, folks. Like you can just comment on your question and I'll read it out. Bhavna has this question: when you suggested to get better at product sense, work with people who have good product sense, is it needed to be a colleague or you can learn outside? Like I said, it's best if it is a manager. It is your manager. There's like the amount of learning I had from my managers, like it's massive. Nothing beats that. In fact, 3 of my managers have been long-time mentors. Like one of my first managers, like still a very good mentor. And every big decision I take, actually, I go and talk to him. And he is very cool that he still listens to me, right? But the thing is, working with somebody with a strong product sense, especially if it is your manager, is the best bit. The second best is having people around you who have strong product sense. Because we all have been in college, right? And in college, at least I went to IIT, and in IIT, you don't learn much from classroom. You learn a lot from your peers and seniors. And the same is true about product sense. So seniors followed by peers. And then you have to finally sort of look outside if both are not making sense to you. But the problem is outside, you'll get very limited time and mind share. Nobody is going to give you, let's say, even an hour a week for the next 6 months to help you become better at product sense. So if you're not getting the first 2, I would suggest like read books, take structured courses, read long form articles and all that. Those are like good ways to at least get initiated. And once you are halfway through it, I think you can then do self-learning, right? So that's basically the answer to your question, Bhavna. Nitya has this question: how exactly to prepare for product sense and strategy interviews for entry-level product roles? I would say for interviews, it's very simple, folks. See, in interviews, you look at some frameworks and you first try to master those frameworks. And second, you start reading about product. Like again, follow the same thing, right? As you learn more and more case studies, your answers will become richer and richer, even if you're following the same framework that any other person in the planet knows and is following. The only difference between 2 people following the same framework is how much evidence can you add? And the richness and evidence will come either from your experience or from the product case studies that you have seen, like deeper case studies. So if you can think about, like when talking about a product, you can talk about how Meta built Reels and how successful that has been. And we can borrow something from there and make this decision. That is a much better answer than just following a framework robotically and trying to answer that question, right? So it's the same recipe, just that the pain that you need to take to prepare for interviews is way lesser than the pain you need to take to be good at job when it comes to product sense and strategy. The next one is, and this is the final question I'll take. I'll also, like in the break, I'll surf through other questions. I'll try to log them at one place and try to answer as much as possible towards the end. But the last one is from Uday, which is how to benchmark yourself, whether you have good product sense or not. I think we are going to answer this question, Uday, when we talk about how to measure and improve upon product sense. So just wait for that segment and you should be good. And yeah, there is a block I think we talk about, which is like user knowledge and company knowledge. Is industry knowledge. Now, industry knowledge, if you want to really like understand deeply about what industry means, because again, it's a word everybody think they know, but most of us don't know. But if you really want to understand what an industry is, like there are a couple of books that come to my mind. One is, of course, like Competitive Strategy by Michael Porter. It's a thick book, but he has written a lot about the industry knowledge. In fact, Porter 5 Forces come from there. And the second is, I think, this Innovator's Dilemma, where again, Clayton Christensen talks about different industries, their evolution life cycle and everything, right? So industry knowledge is something which encompasses your competition, your suppliers, your value chain, and a lot of other things that are happening, the history of the industry and all that. And using that, you try to sort of predict the future of the industry. You try to predict the trends in the industry. You try to predict which competition would be formidable. What would be our defensible moat in a particular industry? Is this even a good industry to be in or not? So all of these answers you can answer once you have acquired industry knowledge, right? And that is also something which you'll find it very hard to acquire in the beginning years of your career as a PM. But as you become a PM executive, this is possibly the most important thing that you'll be thinking about. Because the industry affects whether your product wins or loses in the long run. It affects your product and business strategy to a very, very large extent. And that's why you need to master industry knowledge as you move up, right? So that is industry. So user, company, industry, and then finally domain knowledge. And here, I believe like everybody should have a high amount of domain knowledge, like data, tech, design. These three are essential for PMs to master. But suppose you're a PM who is just starting the journey, you can at least try to be decent at it, be good at it, right? But as you become a PM manager or a PM executive, one of the biggest fallacies I have seen is because the team is working on data, tech, design, PM managers start feeling their job is to manage people and not master these domains. Now, the biggest problem with that is, think of it like this. The job of a manager or a leader is to edit the work that people are doing in their teams and provide feedback. This is sort of like a newspaper editor, sort of like a book editor. Now, think of an editor who is not a good writer or a great writer. Will that person be a good editor? The answer is no. So then how can we accept that data, tech, design are not things which you need to continuously improve and master if you have graduated to a PM manager role, right? Your job as an editor is to edit in the shortest amount of time the decisions that the team is making around design, tech, and data, right? And you won't be able to edit if you're not great at it. Which is why my advice to you, if you are a PM, is be great at it. If you be great at data, tech, design, and users, I think your first level is done. You're going to become like an amazing PM manager, because the skills needed for PM managers like company, industry are something that you'll pick when you get there. But today you have to master these things, right? The next one is very, very important, which is how do you identify problems? And when I say problems, our mind immediately goes to like, let's look at amplitude or mix panel, look at whether the funnel is broken, and look at the problems. Or let's go and talk to users, and they are talking about these 5 problems. Let's try and solve that. Again, great for ICPMs, which is like individual contributor PMs, but terrible for PM managers and executives. As PM managers and executives, your scope of problems also increase. At an executive level, you have to identify problem for a company, not for a user, not in a funnel, not in a feature. For the company, the problems that can be existential threat for the company, the problems that matter at the magnitude of company. At a PM manager level, you have to identify problems for your product lines, not with a specific feature, not with some data, but for your whole product line. And unless you identify those bigger problems at different levels, for a PM, they can focus on data and finding funnel problems and all that. All of that is great. But if you become a PM manager, PM executive, you don't broaden your scope of problems, impact of problems, magnitude of problems, you are going to have a problem someday, right? Because your role is to create more and more impact, create more and more leverage, and identify things which your team is not seeing, right? So identifying problems in itself is a huge area. And in this, the first 3 or 4 things you did actually come together. So one of the things you'll notice is, rather than being a linear set of skills, these skills are intermingled. It's like our brain. It's basically neurons, and neurons are connected, interconnected to each other. And you don't know which neuron is firing when, but they are firing at the right moment, and I'm smiling or I'm making the right decisions and all that. Similarly, like you can't identify problems if you don't understand company, user, industry, and the domain, right? And then comes prioritization. You know the problems and now you prioritize. Now you'll very quickly realize that RISE only works for PMs and usually only in interviews. Even for PMs, when they get into a company, the prioritization suddenly looks like, oh, the CEO is making the decision. So everything else is secondary. You can't apply RISE there. But jokes apart, like the thing is, when it comes to prioritization, again, the scope of prioritization and the importance of prioritization increases with role. As an ICPM, if you move one feature here and there, it does not hurt the company a lot. But if as a PM manager, if you prioritize one product line over other, it can hurt the company a little bit. And if as an executive, you greenlight some initiatives and not others, which could have, which by the way, for example, think of like somebody who greenlit quick commerce for Zomato, or somebody who greenlit, which is usually like the founder, Dipinder, sitting with the CPOs and all, right? But suppose the PM executive is blocking that and that suddenly became big for the competition, you are going to get penalized for it. Not just in the company. You will feel bad about it, right? You will question yourself whether you are the right, you are the right product executive to lead this company or not. So it's very important to understand like prioritization, the scope of prioritization, the impact of prioritization increases linearly with the seniority, right? What about critical problem solving? And what is critical problem solving? So if you think of it, critical problem solving is logically solving a problem. I gave you a problem. There is a drop-off on login. You came with like 5 ideas on how to sort of solve that problem. You said, let's remove the friction. Let's write the copy. Let's motivate the users. Let's add the social proof. 50,000 people have signed up and all that. That is critical problem solving. And that is needed at every level. More so at executive level, because at executive level, the problem that reaches you is usually the problem people have not been able to solve. So you need to be better at problem solving. My sense is organically you'll get better at problem solving if you are decent today as an ICPM and PM manager, right? And the next one is possibly like the least understood and most important one, which is creative problem solving. Now, creative problem solving, if you see, like usually APMs are not creative at all because they are thinking in terms of features, funnels, and all those ideas. But at a PM, at a product level or at a product line or a product sort of whole product suite level, if you are creative, it can just like it can be a multiplier ultimately. Whatever impact you get from mastering all the other skills, if you are creative, it can just magnify that impact. And the reason I'm saying is because creativity, if you think of creativity, how people define creativity, it's not about, feeling sad and, creating music and all that. Although like music is a creative pursuit and painting is, but when it comes to problems, creativity is coming up with solutions which are not very obvious. Think out of the box, right? That's something which we have heard a lot about. What is think out of the box? It's basically like you think of enough solutions and possibly you can come up with a solution which was not very obvious, but is amazing, right? And a lot of value gets generated from creativity. If you look at the biggest and possibly the best tech product humanity has ever built, can you guess what it is, by the way? What is the best tech product that humanity has built so far? I know the answer will be different for different people. Possibly internet and iPhone. I believe iPhone, by the way. Without iPhone, internet would not have reached. And we have a consultant who says Excel. Consultants love Excel for some reason. But anyway, coming back to it. So creativity is basically like you can't build iPhone without creativity, because 1+1 does not lead to iPhone. Like the team sitting and saying what's the importance of keypad is creative, is basically like just thinking out of the box beyond conventions. And by the way, like there is enough literature around creativity. Like I actually, for the course that I designed, I went through at least 10 books on creativity. I shared those books with the team, with the learners also. And I'm sure like none of them went through the books. But my point is people have studied creativity. In fact, the author of the Flow book, like Flow is a very popular book, which talks about like how you need to be in flow to be happy at work. He actually did a lot of research on creativity and wrote a book around it. It's a fabulous book, right? The co-founder of Pixar, Ed Catmull, has written a book around creativity and all that. So you can learn creativity. My question is, if people have written books around creativity, why can't somebody claim that you can actually learn product sense also? After all, creativity is more abstract than product sense, isn't it? Right? And here I'm connecting, see, two sort of non-connected ideas, two non-connected notions, creativity and product sense, and trying to make a point. This is one small example of creativity, right? So creativity is all about making those connections and coming up with newer ideas, innovative ideas. So that's creativity. You have to spend a lot of time on mastering or becoming creative, right? And believe me, like, don't tell yourself I'm not creative. By the way, before designing the course, I used to feel like I'm not creative. I went through all the literature on creativity. And my conclusion is I'm actually a creative person. The research also shows that most of the people are creative. They're born creative, but they sort of are pushed out of creativity by their teachers, by their parents and all that, right? So we are creative. There's a lot of creativity within us. It's just that we have to just remind ourselves and work on it. But enough about creativity. Let's move to the next thing, which is very, very important, which is identifying and managing risks. Now, risks can be like feasibility risk, market risk, business risks, or like something else. Now it's AI risk, which is fundamentally changing the whole landscape and how people do things. When it comes to risks, I believe PM managers should learn about them and try to sort of work around them, but executives have to master them, right? Risk, in fact, like there is a book by Andy Grove called Only the Paranoid Survive. And he talks about how the paranoid founders and CEOs end up surviving because they can see risks, which nobody else can see. So your role as a product executive, even if you're a PM today, like your role, your job, in fact, your moral duty is to acquire this continuous knowledge that makes you better at some of these things, which only come over time. Identifying risks and managing them, you can learn over multi-years, and then you'll be good at it. Industry, you'll learn multi-years, you'll be good at it. Domain, you'll learn multi-years and you'll be good at it. So a lot of things which are needed at executive level, by the way, are not the ones you start learning once you become an executive. You need to learn them before you become an executive, because you need to show those competencies, which is risks, creative problem solving, critical problem solving, prioritization, identifying problems, domain knowledge, industry, company, user less so, by the way. But you need to display this before you become a director, senior director, VP, CPO of a product, right? And one of the best advice I've gotten around career is actually from an Indian author who wrote this book called Catalyst. And it says that the first 15 years of your career should be in pursuit of designing what matters in the next 15 years of your career. Because people who don't learn what matters in the next 15 years of their career, they end up getting stuck in the middle. You can't one day wake up and say that, okay, now I'll master like how to identify risk, because now I'm going to become a GPM. Or now I'll start thinking about how to master an industry. Right? They take like multi-year effort, and you need to start putting in your time today, wherever you are, in whatever ways you can. And all of this come together in two factors, by the way, two forms. Like everything we have, every skill we have talked about in product sense come together in two final launches. The first one is MVP. If you understand everything that I've discussed before, you'll be a fantastic product executive at designing MVPs. Because believe it or not, MVPs are very, very poorly designed in most of the organizations. Most of the times it's basically like, how can we ship it faster? What is the bare bones we have to ship to see if we are getting traction on it and all that? But ultimately, MVP is all about validating the riskiest assumptions around users and business. How do you know which are the riskiest assumptions about users and business? You know by understanding users and business deeply, which means you have to understand users, domain, industry, company, and a lot of things that we discussed, right? If you don't understand that, it will be very hard for you to define an MVP for a 0 to 1 product. For a feature, you can define, right? Which is why, like for PMs, for example, like if a PM is defining an MVP for a feature, the scope is limited. Like you can say that, okay, the riskiest assumption is all about whether my existing users will use it or not. And that's fine. For that, like defining MVP is very different. But if you're trying to create, let's say, quick commerce for Flipkart, defining MVP for quick commerce for Flipkart is the job of a PM manager or executive, which is where everything comes together. Because unless you can assess the risks, unless you can assess the best assumptions, you can't build the MVP. And there's a lot of good literature, by the way. I was surprised that that literature is not popular. But if you search MVP, popular MVPs, there are a lot of good MVPs that people have designed. Some of the names that come in my head is Robinhood, Dropbox. By the way, Dropbox is not referral. Actual Dropbox MVP was a video. I think Dollar Shaving Club and all that, right? And there are some other, I think companies also who have designed fabulous MVPs. You should go and read them. They will open your mind. And the second thing where all of it comes together is strategy. Now think about it. Now that we have talked about these 10, 12 skills, and now I am asking you a very simple question, which is, think of a choice you are going to make. And the next choice you are going to make, the next choice you're going to, all the decisions you are going to make, how are they interconnected? Because you make enough right decisions, which are also interconnected, you can craft a brilliant strategy. Or you can craft a brilliant strategy and you can make all the right decisions that align with it. Because possibly the best and simplest example, by the way, it's an overused example, but I'm still going to use it. The best and simplest examples to understand strategy is Southwest Airlines, which is airlines based out of US, operating since 1970s in a hyper-competitive market. The analogy to that airline is actually Indigo in India. Indigo has tried to copy the playbook of Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines decided to become a low-cost airlines. That's the strategy they followed. In every decision they have made, including not having business seats, only economy seats, including which routes they will be operating on, including what the fare would be, whether they will serve food or not, where will they park the planes and all of the decisions are driven by this simple strategy. All the choices are tying into that one by one by one. And the problem is, if every choice ties into that, it's very hard for somebody else to come and make the same choices in the same time frame, in the same manner. And that's the brilliance of strategy. Like it makes you defensible. It creates a moat. Because enough decisions made in the same direction will create an effect which is very hard to imitate or copy. Toyota is another example, by the way. Toyota production system, right? All of which brings me to this point, which is like, I'll take a couple of minutes and then we'll move back to this thing. Now, all of this is, of course, derived from the cohort that I teach, which is product sense and strategy. The next cohort is going to be starting from 17th August. You can scan this or you can go to pmcurve.com. It will be 10 weeks program, 7 weeks courses and 3 weeks capstone. And I think the offer I have for you, why I'm talking about this in this session is because I'm going to increase the pricing of the program, mostly after this Sunday, because it is still on the same pricing that I had for first cohort. So if you are considering this, go submit the application. You'll receive a shortlist email by Saturday morning. You can join the Q&A sessions on Sunday. And then you can make a call whether you want to pay with the pre-existing price or you would wait for some future cohort or you will pay the future price, right? So this sort of, just go and check it out. I think any which ways, like feel free to write me about concerns and feedback. That will also help me. Of course, like if you plan to join, that will definitely help me. But just go and check it out. That's a nudge from my end. For what I can tell you, like it's like I said, it's the first program that got launched around product sense and strategy across the globe. And even like there is a lot of parallels between, I think what I'm very, very happy about is Shreyas came with like another product sense program, which is priced at some $2,000. And a lot of topics are actually very parallel to this program, which actually made me very happy because I actually admire Shreyas a lot. And we somehow like arrived at similar program structure, even if like operating in two different geographies, very different experience and all that, right? So go and check it out and let me know if you have any concerns in Sunday session. Definitely submit the application if you want to attend the Sunday session, because only the shortlisted candidates get the invite to the Sunday session. Okay. Now that this is over, let's move to the next one, which is how do you measure if you're improving product sense? And this is important in two ways. One is because, see, first of all, you want to know whether you are good at product sense. That's given, right? Like, unless you know whether you are good at product sense, how will you improve? And the second is, even if you are improving, you are working towards it, how do you know you are actually improving it? So you need to measure so that you can improve, because as the quote goes like, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So you have to measure it in order to improve it. Now, the framework that you can use is actually exactly the same. First of all, like, try to master concepts around these: domain, user, critical problem solving, business growth, creative problem solving, prioritization, company strategy, industry, risks, MVP. So around all these competencies, you can start, at least you can do self-assessment. You can also take feedback from people you trust. That how do you rate me in these things? So that's the first step. And through this, you'll identify some of the competencies you need to work on. For example, creativity might be something that you want to work on, or industry knowledge is something that you want to work on. Or maybe you are not good at company strategy, or you don't understand company very well because you keep struggling with people coming and telling you what to do. You keep struggling with company politics, right? And all that is signal that you don't understand company strategy very well. So first, evaluate the competencies. Second, build your feedback loops. The problem with product sense is, if you are measuring whether you had right decisions or not, you just have 2 to 3 good feedback in a year. You can't rely on something which happens twice or thrice to improve product sense, where you are working every day to improve it. So you need to build quicker feedback loops. And this is a post you should read, because I would not cover it like in detail, but the point is, these are like feedback loops. What is the quality of questions you ask? Do people receive your arguments well? Do you get stumped while doing a presentation? Can you spot flaws in narratives and all that, right? But all of this will give you like quick feedback loops on the job. And then there is feedback loop beyond the job, right? Which is basically when you are looking at news articles or case studies, can you disseminate and ask questions which nobody is asking? Can you critique products and sort of make a point in an informal environment which people actually appreciate? Okay, wow, we didn't think it like that, right? Can you state beyond obvious in those discussions, in those friendly discussions? That will give you quick feedback loops beyond the job. And finally, there is litmus test, which is monitor your decisions, right? So, for example, this is a template that I use, and I have shared this. So you can go through the blog and you can actually take this, but actually track the decisions. And then you will know for sure where you are making mistakes. Do you have a pattern? Does your design go suboptimal, or did somebody else copy it and actually was more successful because they thought about distribution where you didn't? All of that will help you improve your decisions over time. And that is a litmus test, right? So this will be like my roadmap for product sense and strategy. Step 1 is understanding what is product sense, what is strategy, how are they connected. Step 2 is accepting that they're hard to learn, trying to find somebody who you can learn from and all that. Follow a method, find the right case studies, learn the right concepts and frameworks. And finally, understand all the competencies that come together while making a decision. If you look at this set of competencies, there is nothing that it does not cover when it comes to making a product decision, or a business decision, or a product strategy decision, or a business strategy decision. It covers everything. And that's when you master product sense, right? Now, the books that you'd love after this session, if you loved this session, Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug. It's an entertaining book. You can finish it in an afternoon. Amazing book. The Act of Creation. If any of you end up finishing it, I can give you 50% discount on product sense and strategy course. Just ping me. I have not been able to finish it, despite spending 2 months on it. It's a tough book, but a very rewarding one. It was written in 1965, by the way. One of the best books on creativity and creation. Competitive Strategy, amazing book by Michael Porter. But rather than reading Porter 5 Forces, go and actually read Porter. right? Just Enough Research, amazing book by Erika Hall, which actually is Just Enough Research. Competitive Advantage by Market Porter. Again, Porter is one of my favorite writers on strategy and products, like you'll realize now. Smart Business by Ming Zheng, which talks about Alibaba and data and network effects and all. Are Your Lights On? Terrific book on problem solving. And How to Lie with Statistics, terrific book on data. Beyond this, you know the obvious suspects, the mom test, the design of everyday things, and all that. But you already know that, right? So I've tried to keep books which I actually loved reading, which are very entertaining, barring one, which is The Act of Creation, right? So yeah, that would be the session for you.